So you're looking for the real story, right? The key stuff, the things that actually make you feel like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah, getting past the surface level.
Exactly. Well, you're in the right place. Today, we're diving into something fascinating, the history of pulque in Mexico.
And it's a story that's much bigger than just one drink. We're
Yeah.
using Pulque de Taloa 100.pdf as our guide here.
Right.
And it really shows how pulque is tangled up with Mexico's whole cultural and even economic past.
Absolutely. Pulque, that ancient fermented drink
Right.
from the maguey plant.
That's the one, agave, yeah.
And it's not just some old-time beverage, is it? The source suggests it had real significance.
Oh, absolutely. Major significance.
So our mission today, for everyone listening, is to unpack that, find the key moments, the ups and downs, from its sacred beginnings through all the struggles right up to this kind of surprising comeback it's having.
Yeah, it's quite a journey.
Okay, so where do we even start? Way back.
Way back, pre-Hispanic times.
Mhm.
And what's really striking is just how important pulque was spiritually back then.
The source mentions Mayahul, the goddess of the maguey plant.
Exactly. The legend goes that pulque was basically her gift to people.
Wow. So seen as sacred, like actually divine.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Which totally changes how you think about it, doesn't it? It wasn't just alcohol.
Yeah, it really does. So it was used in ceremonies.
Definitely. The Aztecs, for instance, used it in rituals for gods like Tlaloc used the rain god and Mayahul herself, of course.
A way to connect, maybe, to the spiritual world.
That seems to have been the belief, yes, facilitating that connection.
But it wasn't like everyone just drinking it all the time, was it? The source says it was controlled.
Very controlled. Strict rules. Large quantities were mostly for priests, elders, warriors, important figures,
Okay.
regular folks. Small amounts, and really only on special occasions.
Why so strict? Just because it was sacred or...
Probably a mix of things.
Yeah.
Underscores the sacredness,
Right.
definitely. But maybe also, recognizing its effects, its potent stuff.
Right. And the making of it, the aguamiel, that sap from the maguey.
Yeah, the aguamiel, sweet sap. And getting it isn't simple. The plants take years, sometimes like 15 years to mature.
Wow. That's a long time. So extracting it was a skilled job.
A careful process, and then it ferments in those traditional containers.
The tinas, stone or clay ones, the source mentions.
Right, and that's where the magic happens. Sweet sap turns into this thick, kind of foamy drink.
With that unique taste,
Yep.
right? Sweet and sour, sort of. Agridulce.
Exactly. Distinctive smell, too. You can almost picture it.
Yeah, you can. But then things change. The Spanish arrive.
Big change. They bring their own drinks, wine, spirits.
And pulque starts to take a hit.
Initially, yeah. It faced competition it never had before. Its dominance wasn't guaranteed anymore.
But wait, it didn't just fade out, did it? The source talks about resistance.
No, not at all. That's a key point. Indigenous communities really held on to it. They kept making it, kept consuming it. It was part of their identity.
So a kind of cultural pushback.
Definitely. And interestingly, this period also starts a sort of blending. Pulque starts interacting with these new Spanish customs, new flavors even. It begins to adapt.
Okay, fast forward a bit. 19th, early 20th century, suddenly pulque is back in a big way.
Huge way. The source describes it becoming like a staple again, part of everyday life, especially out in the countryside, but also in the city cantinas.
Those lively bars, what drove that comeback?
It just became deeply embedded again, socially, culturally, and demand grew so much that you start seeing these large pulque haciendas pop up.
Haciendas, like big estates dedicated to making it.
Exactly. Production ramps up. We're talking almost industrial scale for the time. They needed to supply the cities.
The source mentions massive amounts being shipped in huge barrels. Must have been quite the sight.
Definitely. And it became a really significant economic driver, a whole industry.
But success breeds competition.
Always. The beer industry starts to emerge, distilled spirits too. And they look at pulque and see an obstacle.
Ah. And this is where it gets ugly. The Guerra Sucia. The dirty war against pulque.
That's what the source calls it. And yeah, it suggests a deliberate, calculated campaign to basically take pulque down.
Why so aggressive? Just business.
Well, to really get the intensity, you have to understand just how big pulque was economically in the 19th century. These haciendas in places like Hidalgo, Tlaxcala, state of Mexico, they were huge operations.
Right, you mentioned the maguey taking 15 years to grow. That's a massive investment of time and land.
Huge. And then you had the specialized workers, the tlachiqueros, whose whole job job was extracting that aguamiel.
A real skill.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then that aguamiel, it has to get to the tinacales, the fermentation houses,
Okay.
where skilled tinacaleros oversaw the fermentation in big vats, often wood or stone.
Hmm.
It wasn't just random, it required expertise.
And then getting it to market, those giant barrels, what were they called?
Sachiku whites.
Yeah.
Huge things, transported on carts, pulled by mules, oxen, sometimes long distances into the cities.
Imagine that whole logistical chain just to get the pulque to the drinkers.
And in the cities, you had the pulquerias, which, as the source points out, were way more than just bars.
Social centers, right? Cultural hubs.
Exactly. Places people met, shared news, music, stories, really vital community spaces.
So there's this whole complex system, hacienda owners, merchants in the cities.
The whole ecosystem. And they were adapting, too, adding fruit flavors, things like that, to appeal to more people. They even had pulque festivals. It was deeply, deeply ingrained.
Okay, so it's thriving. Then beer arrives, mid-19th century.
Yeah, largely brought over by European immigrants, Germans especially. And they came with advantages.
Like what? Money, better tech.
Both. The source highlights their stronger financial backing and, more modern brewing technology. They could build big, efficient factories.
So they could scale up faster, maybe.
Much faster.
Yeah.
And their expansion was aggressive. Big breweries popping up in major cities. Plus, they were smart about marketing.
Guess so.
They positioned beer as the modern, sophisticated choice. Clean, pure, aspirational.
Contrasting it with pulque.
Deliberately. Advertising started painting pulque as dirty, old-fashioned, maybe even unhealthy.
That's the dirty war starting, shaping perceptions.
Precisely. And the source suggests it wasn't just the breweries. Certain government sectors, parts of the press, they seemed to join in. A coordinated effort to discredit pulque.
And those rumors, the source mentions some really nasty ones, like that they used animal waste in production.
Yeah, the infamous muñeca myth, the idea that excrement wrapped in cloth was used. Totally false, but incredibly damaging.
Hard to believe people bought that.
Well, rumors spread, especially when they're amplified. And then you had biased scientific studies, negative health reports questioning pulque's safety.
Biased how? Like designed to find problems.
The source implies they often had shaky methods or were maybe funded with a specific outcome in mind. Basically weaponizing science and health concerns.
Wow, so this smear campaign plus the brewery's built-in advantages.
It worked. Beer started gaining ground, especially with the middle and upper classes who bought into that modern image.
And pulque.
It started to decline. Consumption dropped. Pulquerias began closing. The haciendas faced a real crisis.
But it didn't vanish completely.
No. That cultural resistance kept simmering. People still drank it. Traditions continued, just less openly, perhaps.
And that resistance becomes even more important later, right? Because the pressure didn't let up in the early 20th century.
No, if anything, it intensified. After the Mexican Revolution, the government was really focused on projecting this image of progress, of modernity.
And breweries fit that image better than pulque haciendas.
It seems that way. The source suggests the government itself got involved in spreading negative information, repeating those same false stories about production.
Seriously, from official channels.
That's the implication. And those questionable health reports kept circulating, undermining public trust.
And then came regulations.
Yes, stricter rules for sanitation for production. On the surface, maybe seemed reasonable, but the source argues they hit the small, rural producers hardest. The ones without the capital to easily upgrade or navigate complex bureaucracy. It effectively squeezed many of them out.
Sounds like a way to clear the field for the bigger players.
It certainly had that effect. And the pulquerias themselves were targeted too. High taxes, difficulties getting licenses, sometimes outright refusal, made it incredibly hard to operate legally.
So it's a multi-pronged attack. Economic, regulatory, cultural too.
Absolutely. Education, popular culture, they were used to promote beer as modern, healthy, the future.
And pulque was.
Portrayed as backward, linked to poverty, ignorance, the past. The source even mentions this happening in schools.
Wow. Teaching kids that pulque was bad.
Or at least not part of the New Mexico. Beer was the drink for a modernizing nation.
And cultural events, festivals.
Beer got the spotlight, often with government backing. Pulque. Marginalized, ignored, pushed aside, reinforcing that narrative. Media, newspapers, magazines, early radio played a role too.
It's like a full-on propaganda campaign.
It certainly looks like a concerted effort to reshape cultural norms around drinking. But again, even with all that pressure.
It didn't completely die out.
No. Pulque-producing communities held on. Some larger haciendas adapted and survived, those smaller. That deep cultural root was strong. The dirty war definitely shifted the landscape, made beer dominant, but pulque endured.
Which makes its current revival feel even more significant, like reclaiming something that was actively suppressed.
Exactly, and that suppression, the source details became quite direct. Repression.
Going beyond just bad press and
Oh
regulations.
yeah, actual closures of businesses, arrests, financial penalties. It got pretty heavy-handed.
Like raiding pulquerias.
Intense inspections, yeah.
Hmm.
Often leading to closures the source calls arbitrary. Crippling fines, goods confiscated. It sounds less like regulation and more like harassment.
And those complex new rules.
Became a barrier. Too costly, too complicated for many small producers. They just had to close shop.
And arrests. You mentioned arrests.
Yeah, owners of pulquerias, even hacienda owners, arrested on charges the source suggests were often inflated or just baseless, a way to disrupt the whole network.
Targeting the producers.
Yeah.
What about the drinkers?
Them too. Raids in working class areas, rural spots where pulque was common, people facing questioning, even legal trouble just for consuming it.
That's intense. But people pushed back.
They did. That resilience, especially in rural and working class communities, for them, pulque wasn't just a drink. It was tied to their identity. An attack on it felt like an attack on them.
So how did they resist?
Ingeniously, sometimes. Producers went underground, became clandestine pulqueros, the source calls them, distributing through secret informal networks, finding ways around the restrictions.
Keeping it alive, even in secret.
And in public too, where they could. Local festivals, celebrations, pulque often remain central, despite the risks. The traditions, the songs, the stories about it, they're kept alive, passed down.
That determination is incredible.
It is. And that legacy of resistance is really the foundation for the renewed interest we see today. Yeah. Pulque survived all that, and now people want to reclaim it.
It really does feel like a symbol, doesn't it, of communities holding on to who they are against serious pressure, resilience, pride.
Absolutely. And the source makes it clear the damage from the dirty war ran deep. It wasn't just about the pulque business itself.
Right, the cultural impact, losing traditions tied to it.
So many ritual social customs just faded. And the pulqueries closing that was a huge loss.
More than just bars disappearing.
Much more. They were community hubs, places for sharing stories, music, celebrating together. Losing them weakened the social connections in a lot of places.
And the knowledge, the skills to make it.
That was threatened too. With traditional production declining in the haciendas and small workshops, that generational transfer of knowledge got interrupted. Expertise risked being lost.
And the rural communities who were the keepers of this tradition.
They were marginalized. Hit by the repression, the economic limits, it hurt their local economies, lessened their cultural influence. Their voices were kind of silenced as modernization pushed forward.
Local festivals centered on pulque just disappeared.
Or became shadows of their former selves. Displaced by the push for modernization, the promotion of other drinks, those vibrant celebrations became memories for many. And that whole campaign to paint pulque as backward, unhygienic.
While beer was modern, progressive.
That fundamentally shifted how people saw it. It created this divide, between traditional culture and these new, often foreign influences. It affected people's sense of identity, their social standing.
It's a heavy legacy.
Very. But, and this is crucial, the source points out that same history of suppression is now fueling the comeback.
Right, like a reaction against that loss.
Exactly. People are actively working to reopen pulquerias, support artisanal producers who use the old ways, bring back those festivals. It's a conscious effort at reclamation.
And it's driven by this realization of what pulque actually represents, culturally and historically.
Yes. New generations are finding it, seeing it not just as a drink, but as this symbol of resistance, of cultural survival.
And maybe, as the source suggests, it's helping to heal some of those old wounds, restore its place.
I think that's part of the hope. It's about reconnecting with heritage, safeguarding it, a deliberate effort to revitalize production, consumption, and just celebrate its importance.
And we're seeing the old methods being revived.
Yes, in smaller haciendas, family workshops, people using those ancestral techniques, becoming guardians of that tradition.
And there's an interest in doing it well, right? Organic, artisanal.
Definitely. A focus on quality, authenticity, but also sustainability, respecting the mogwai, the land. That appeals to a lot of consumers today who care about where things come from.
And the pulqueria is coming back in cities.
Yeah.
Are they different now?
Some are evolving, yeah.
Ooh.
Becoming more like specialized bars, cultural spots that really celebrate the drink, its history, its traditions. Not just places to drink, but places to learn and experience.
And the festivals, too. Gaining traction again.
They seem to be. Becoming important spaces to share knowledge, taste different kinds of pulque, take part in those cultural celebrations again.
It's great that it's being recognized more formally, too, as culturally important. Studies, exhibitions.
Yeah, academic and cultural institutions are getting involved in documenting its history, celebrating it. There's even talk of promoting it internationally, sharing its story.
Still challenges, though, I imagine. Competing drinks aren't going away, keeping traditions authentic in a modern world.
For sure. It's not without obstacles, but the momentum seems real.
It really does. Because Pulque, with this incredible story, linking ancient ways to the present, it feels like more than just a drink.
It really is a symbol of Mexican cultural identity. Its comeback isn't just about reviving a beverage, it's about celebrating the endurance of a whole culture that refused to be erased.
So wrapping this up, we've followed Pulque from sacred origins through an economic boom, then this deliberate campaign, this dirty war to tear it down.
Followed by repression, resistance, and now this really hopeful resurgence.
It's such a powerful story of cultural resilience, isn't it? Standing up against big economic and political forces.
It truly is a compelling case study.
And maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Think about other traditions, maybe in your own culture or others you know. Could they have faced similar pressures, similar dirty wars?
Yeah, what shapes what we value, what we consume, what gets remembered, and what gets pushed aside. It makes you think about those power dynamics.
Definitely something to ponder. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.